All right, we're live.
Yes, sir. Hey, Matt.
Aaron, what's happening? What's new?
Sir. Man, new is all the exciting things that we're watching develop in the IT space and the clients and questions that we have coming. And we're having a lot of questions come around. Is OneDrive or is that backup sufficient? Or are there any deficiencies in my backup plan? Because just I told a story this past week about a friend of mine that she was doing some updates to her backups, and it was sitting on the rail of her porch. And as she stood up, it fell off the porch and into the pond below. So there's a lot of differing opinions, and I just kind of wanted to get our clients and our networks minds wrapped around what a backup is, what it's for, and how we can be sure that our backup is working. So I'm gonna ask you what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, in recent history, we've seen some examples of some outages that have occurred, and just because you've moved to the cloud doesn't mean that a storm doesn't roll around from time to time and take things out for a few minutes. But yeah, I mean, in this move, it's important to identify, where does stuff live these days? What is the cloud? Where does it exist? Are there copies of it? And there are ways to test for it. So, it's not like the old days. For those who've been using technology for years and years, you could unplug from the internet and still get to your files and still do things. And for the most part, that's still the case. But that's a good starting point is to, start unplugging things and see what happens, see what doesn't work. But we've always recommended that, as you move things into the cloud or not, have copies of stuff. Back in the old days, it's called a copy because, paper, have a copy of important docs. Keep your stuff safe. But anyways, the most important part of this is, what to have a plan and to develop a plan for, if something happens to your stuff, how do you get it back? How do you get to it?
That was one of the questions kind of posed to me was I get a copy. So is there a number of copies that's kind of more advantageous? Like why not have, 18 copies of stuff out there and 18 backups and 18 redundancies? And I guess is there a kind of a nice, even expected number of copies or backups or redundancies?
I mean, I like a minimum of three, which is, one that it's on my device, or at least I believe it to be on my device. Then there's a copy up in the cloud. So, up in Bill Gates' computer or whoever's computer, one's over there. So that's two. And then the third would be, with a company like us through one of our partners, where, if either of those organizations, for whatever reason, if there's an outage or an issue, you drop your laptop in a pond. Okay, well, there's a there's a copy of it. Microsoft has a copy of it, or it's in the cloud. Okay, so you're not, you just get a new laptop and you're okay. Um, what if our stuff goes down? It's not a big deal because you've got it on your computer. You got it at Microsoft. And then if the cloud provider goes down or makes a mistake or has an issue, then, well, we have a backup of it and you've got it on your computer. So anyways, three is kind of a magic number because if two can go down or be unavailable and you're okay, um, two is not as good.
So is there a scenario where I know you said Bill Gates's computer? Let's first define the cloud as
Mm.
somebody else's computer,
Yes.
right? Right.
Yes.
Is there from a security standpoint? Like I know if I were or one of our prospects were to contract with Tech Squared for their backup to be stored on our stuff. What kind of assurances do we have, or can we have that, let's say OneDrive or Bill Gates' computer or us, like what kind of security? I get the three copies being kind of its own security measure. I understand that, and I think all of our clients will as well. But is there additional security? Like, how do I know that if Bill Gates' computer, OneDrive, or ours gets breached, what does that do for me as far as both having the three copies and that information that's on them? How can I be sure that that's secure?
Sure. So I'll go back just, kind of on the theme of our webinar here is how to not lose your mind. So a good way to not lose your mind is to not be surprised by it. So with us, we usually have alerts set up and we take care of that for you. So hopefully we know before you know that something has gone wrong. And from there, um, I got lost. Anyways, yeah. From there, what was it, Aaron?
Well, so when we were talking about the backups that we have, the three copies that we have, you made an excellent
Oh,
point of knowing that knowing that you have those three copies, you're going to be more at peace just knowing that the security is in those three copies, but also the security around that and how to not lose your mind worrying about if stuff is protected or if it's going to be subject to a potential threat.
yes. So that's where I was going was, we're the ones that can get alerted to it. We monitor it. And then we also, uh, you know, check and make sure that our partners are accountable and are doing what they say. So, in other words, we check all three spots where we can, and then we also verify. So, we work with our partners and we do integrity checks. So we kind of go, we don't just believe it when they say it's backed up. We go in and make sure. So we test regularly, which is an important step because sometimes, I mean, this is for our contingency and our plan as well of when disaster strikes. We don't want to find out that there was an issue at the critical moment. So, which is your critical moment or the client's critical moment. So it's worth our time to go in and make sure that the processes that we have or the software or vendor or whatever, we go in and test it and make sure it works. So during the critical moments, we can provide, expectations of what's going to happen, how long it's going to take to get you back up and running, the scope of everything, make sure everything's all covered. But yeah, usually, we get the heads up first. We can let hopefully you're seeing green lights on a regular basis and we'll know before you do. And so that's, one of the great ways to not lose your mind is to be informed, to get reporting on it. Um, good or bad, if there's good backups, bad backups, or if the scope of it needs to change, hey, we had a little, this is just an example, not, fake example of, a lot of times during restoration, you might find, you've got more stuff than we knew about, and you didn't know. So there's an exercise of restoration. Your backups are only as good as your restore function.
Okay. And
So
and is that a restore function? Is that something that a business owner should be aware of, or like? And I'll be honest with you, from my perspective, a restore function is just the ability to restore back to what I had in my mind, but I feel like it's something different.
well, what's great is that all the business owner needs to, they just need to tell us what all needs to, they can identify what all, I mean, they can identify everything it needs to get restored to the best of their ability pretty easily. They don't have to be technical about it. They can
Mhm.
they can help us prioritize their stuff and identify, hey, if all this were to disappear, I have to have X, Y, and Z come back. Like that needs to come back. So they don't need to know how. We can explain how, but um, we like to work with them and go, hey, all you have to worry about is you tell us what you need to be restored. And we go above and beyond outside of what they know, what the client knows. But that's usually the easy part. You don't have to know the technical.
Is there a, we talked about the time of, because I can see all of these questions spiraling out of control because business owners, many of them, they have to work in tech simply because of how technologically advanced our world is, but they still don't want to because it's not their focus of their business. One of the questions being, we talked about the time of a restore, um, and what kind of uh, numbers of copies and length of restoration. But is there like a metric size of terabyte, or is there a specific uh, hour requirement or expectation of basically how much can they afford to be without
Sure.
for
So
them, for them to kind of back up?
what we try to help, the industry term for it is similar to recovery point objective, so that it's basically um, we look at a formula and go, you have this much stuff and the pipes are only this big and it's going to take this long to restore it. And so, when we help you develop the plan for what, how things are to get restored and how long, we go through and just, it's a formula depending on the size of your stuff and the business and the priority of it. But typically that answer also alludes to, full or complete recovery. The nice thing about working with us is that most of the time, um, the recoveries you're doing are very small. It's a file here and there, a thing here and there, which, the value of that adds up over time, for sure. But of course, when there's a full down situation, yeah, you want to be able to know, and we want to be able to know ahead of time so that you can inform your employees, the people that you're working with, and yeah, that's part of what's great about working with somebody on this is we can help determine what that is. So
Now, I think that probably the most recent, we'll call it, uh, disrupting event that people can kind of relate to in our audience. Um, there was a lot of questions. I got asked a lot of questions by different people in regards to this, what you and I will refer to as this CrowdStrike event. Um, what, if anything, would have been the benefit of a backup? So, because I can promise you during that Friday, most of the business owners I know that aren't clients of ours, they did end up losing their mind for one period of time or another. And I'm curious that they may have questions about how a backup may have been beneficial in that scenario, or would it have been?
well, and for those that aren't familiar, back in July, there was an issue with a company called CrowdStrike, and they pushed out some software that's security software that's used on millions of computers, and lights went out on a lot of machines. And long story short, it's an interesting scenario because there were known fixes to it. So it became a question of um, IT professionals had two choices. They had to either invoke their disaster recovery plan or uh, attempt the fix. So it's a way of, you know, uh, do you try to fix it and then everything's back up, or do you do what you know works, which is go through the plan, go through the restore process? It might take more time, but your confidence in that should be way higher because if you've fully gone through it, so you know that's just an interesting scenario there to think about. And many people in IT and organizations ultimately went for restore because in the early hours, you ha- there was no known fix that eventually came out, um, and so they had to just buckle up and go through that restore process. Um, so I mean, yeah, very interesting scenario, but ultimately, things started to come back online. Um, and people felt the impacts of that in different ways. But the ones that came out ahead are the ones that had a plan. they had a plan for restoring, and they had ability to do so. So,
And if I can kind of put that, because to your point, yes, most of our clients are like, "Well, we don't want to know how, we just want to know that it does happen." When what would that look like from a, I'll say, a proactive standpoint when we come in and we do a pre-flight? Not that this didn't
hmm
happen, but if we were to come in and do a pre-flight and note what what was being referred to as a blue screen of death,
sure.
um, what would, if could you kind of walk through what should be expected from a client of a reliable proactive MSP, what that would look like maybe from a perspective of restore, or like you said, enact the plan, or
hmm
kind of wait? What would that look like if you can speculate?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that what we like to do is we like to become the second or third engine on your airplane, and not many people know. Okay, most airplanes, if they have two engines, they could run on one, but we want to be that second or third engine. And so when you have an outage, a major or critical event, um, uh, our implementation typically has a failover option. So it might not be as fast as the servers you have or the infrastructure you have, but you're not completely offline. So that's usually um, the thing that we like to implement first, is that you won't even, you'll be notified, but you might not necessarily notice that you're even down. So
Mm.
we basically have a way to kind of stand up a temporary or a failover option so that you're not hard down, and then we can work to restore um, the production environment. So
To say, interesting that you kind of alluded to, well, the title of this webinar is how to not lose your mind or your data. And you said, so would there be times where we reach out to a client and say, hey, we noticed this is going on, and they're on the other end of the phone like, yeah, I'm not seeing anything like that? And is that kind of a function of, use the term failover process,
mhm.
to the layman, it might be something that, is that a process of the backup, and you called it the recovery point objective? Is it kind of where we notice something, we're like, hey, we're going to put you back to here, which is not a loss of any kind, it just enables us to work in the background? Is
Yeah.
that kind of how that looks? Or
Well, that would be, yeah, exactly. That would be the ideal situation. Is we were alerted to an issue and we cut over to your failover option, which is like it's like a slower airplane, or it might not be as fast, but we would notify you, and the impacts to you would be minimized. Meanwhile, we can work on wherever the failure occurred, and then once it's back up and running, you switch it back over, and then you're back up and running, like you were before. So yeah, that is what we achieve with our clients, is a failover. So even even if your recovery point objective and the time it takes to restore is very high, we can minimize the impact of that because we can do it in the background while you're running on other stuff. So
you know it's interesting that this comes up kind of this week, because today being Thursday, last Thursday I was actually kind of out of commission because while driving down the road I hit a pothole, busted my front tire. And I'm just going to kind of put an analogy together, and you can tell me where I'm wrong here. I hit a tire, and all of a sudden, my warning light on my dash comes up, and I'm looking at the tire pressure going down. And it's like, you're done, buddy. So tire went completely flat. I had a jack in the car, and I had just a little donut. And my first thought in my head was, oh God, I hope I have air in that spare tire, because I was dead in the water if I didn't. Um, Fortunately, I did have air in that tire, and to your point, I had to go slower because those are only rated at 50 miles an hour, not 70. But that got me to a tire shop where they could replace that tire and get me back up and functioning. Does that kind of align analogy wise with what we're talking about here in regards to I had a spare, i.e. backup or redundancy in the back of the car with me. And that allowed me to cut over to a slower method of still getting down the road. I didn't have to call a tow truck. I didn't have to, if I hadn't had the air, if I hadn't had the spare tire, then I'd have been just dead on the side of the road or stuck on
Yep.
the side of the road as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. What would you have done if you hadn't had a spare tire? So, at all. Um, that's, a whole different thing. So I would say, yeah, the analogy sticks. There's different levels that you can plan for the best of your ability, right? I would say, um, another way to not lose your mind. Yeah, it is to have that plan. So if you know you have a spare tire, well, occasionally make sure it's got some air. Go all the way.
Well, and
So
that's now something on a monthly checklist for me. And not to say that, but it did hit that was the first thing that hit my mind was, oh God, I hope I have air. Because I
mhm,
knew I had a spare tire, but I hadn't checked it. So that's where I was just kind of touching base with you. Like, does that hold up for our process of we legitimately check the air in your backup
mhm,
so that you don't even have to worry about that as a business owner? It's just, I know, Tech Squared's got me because they check that on, to your point earlier of all green lights. What,
mhm.
what would that kind of, I know that's part of our uh, constant checks and our proactive approach is just going through the analytics of each client to make sure that they are all on green lights.
Yeah, we'll provide the reporting if you get, your workstation backed up or all the things that are backed up. We provide the reports, good or bad. If it was good, we let you know. If it's bad, we let you know. As frequently or as little as you would like to know. We can bombard you. We can just spam you with all the attempts, or we can just alert you when there's an issue. So, um, yeah, either way.
Right. Well, Matt, kind of wrapping this up and putting a bow on it in regards to, backups and not backing down from business while keeping our sanity. Do you have any kind of recommendations or maybe actionable items that so maybe somebody that's watching this is not a client, but they should maybe look at being able to protect themselves a little bit or implementing something? Is there any kind of actionable items they can take away from this?
Yeah, I would say that it's just ask yourself a lot of questions and make those attempts to develop a plan. I would say, um, ask yourself some business related questions of how much does downtime cost? What's the cost of, um, there's lots of technology solutions that can help you out here. That's not, that's not really the issue. The issue is how to not lose your mind. And by asking questions, like how much is the cost of downtime? What's the effect on your customers if you experience downtime, or on your employees? If internet goes down, does that lead to a bad shift or a bad day at the office? So how can you prevent that? And it can be prevented. We can provide backup options to internet. So there's a lot of exploring and brainstorming that we can uh, uh, talk to you about. We can work with you and help you um, not lose your mind. We can help you ask the questions as well. So I would say, you know, and they're outside the box. You don't have to be technical. So, yeah, when your phones go down, we can set up a call forward that goes to a cell phone, so you're not just hard down. If Microsoft goes down, we can get your stuff back up. So there's things outside of just the traditional backup and disaster recovery we can help you with. So.
Man, you covered a lot just in that, and we'll save some of those for. I'm sitting here trying to frantically keep notes.
Hmm.
We'll cover some of that in future webinars, Matt. Really want to appreciate you for your time today, and thank you for just kind of illuminating how we can remain sane with business and data backups on a day to day. So,
Yeah.
thank you for helping us all not lose our mind or our data.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
All right, Matt.
All right.